The English Civil War began as a long-running dispute between King Charles I and Parliament. The main point of the disagreement was how the kingdoms of England, Scotland and Ireland should be governed. When it became apparent that they would not reach an agreement and that an armed conflict was very likely, Charles left London on the 2nd of March 1642. He headed towards the north of England to raise an army. He set up his temporary capital in York. The Royalists then attempted to seize the port of Kingston upon Hull and its stash of arms and equipment. However, during the siege of Hull, the Parliamentarian garrison repulsed the King's army and drove them away. In early August, the King moved southwards and seized the contents of the armouries of both Lincoln and Leicester. On the 22nd of August, he declared war on Parliament by raising the royal standard at Nottingham. From Nottingham, Charles moved to Chester and then to Shrewsbury, where a large number of recruits from Wales and the Welsh borders were expected to join him. Parliament dispatched its army northwards under the Earl of Essex to confront the King. Essex marched to Northampton, where he mustered almost 20,000 men. On receiving news of the King's move westwards, Essex marched northwestwards towards Worcester. On the 23rd of September, in the first clash between the main Royalist and Parliamentarian armies, the Royalist cavalry under Prince Rupert of the Rhine routed the cavalry of Essex vanguard at the Battle of Powick Bridge. However, lacking sufficient infantry support, the Royalists abandoned Worcester. The King left Shrewsbury on the 12th of October with his army preparations complete and started his advance towards London. En route, he hoped to give battle to Essex when it was advantageous for him to do so. But both sides had little knowledge of the precise location of each other. On the 22nd of October, the Royalist army was billeted in the villages around Edgehill. This threatened the Parliamentarian garrison at Banbury, who sent a messenger to the garrison at Warwick Castle for assistance. Essex had just reached Warwick Castle and set out immediately to Kyneton to relieve the Banbury garrison. That evening there were skirmishes between the opposing armies in and around Kyneton. On receiving the news of these skirmishes, the King ordered his forces to muster for battle on the top of Edgehill the following day. When Essex received reports that the Royalists were massing on Edgehill, he moved to engage the King's forces. In terms of numbers, both sides were evenly matched, with the Royalists having just under 15,000 men, while the Parliamentarian army had just over 15,000 men. Although both armies were mostly composed of inexperienced troops, the Royalist cavalry was superior to Parliament's cavalry at the beginning of the war. However, the Parliamentarian foot soldiers were better equipped, with many of the Royalist pikemen lacking armour and their musketeers lacking swords. This made them more vulnerable during hand-to-hand combat. The Royalist right wing consisted of cavalry and dragoons led by Prince Rupert, with the King's own lifeguard of horse in support, leaving the King with no cavalry reserve under his command. The Royalist centre consisted of 5 regiments of infantry, while the left wing consisted of cavalry and dragoons under Sir Henry Wilmot. The Parliamentarian left wing consisted of a brigade of cavalry under Sir James Ramsay, supported by 600 musketeers and several cannon. In the centre were 3 infantry brigades, with Colonel Charles Essex's brigade on the left and Sir John Meldrum's brigade on the right, with Sir Thomas Ballard's infantry brigade deployed behind Essex. Cavalry brigades were deployed behind Meldrum. The right wing consisted of cavalry and dragoons under Lord Fielding. With the Parliamentarians holding their position, the Royalist army had started a slow descent from Edgehill at around midday. However, due to their lack of experience, this was not completed until around 2 o'clock. The battle began with an exchange of artillery fire. While the bombardment continued, on the Royalist right flank, Rupert launched his attack. Ramsay's brigade fired an ineffectual mounted pistol volley before turning about to withdraw. Rupert soon overran the Parliamentarian guns and musketeers and began the pursuit of Ramsay's men. At about the same time on the other flank, Wilmot began his attack. Fielding's outnumbered brigades soon gave way. Wilmot then began the pursuit of Fielding's men towards Kyneton. The Royalist infantry then began their advance in the centre. Many of the Parliamentarian infantry had already run away as their cavalry retreated, and others fled as the infantry came to close quarters. However, the infantry brigades of Sir Thomas Ballard and Sir John Meldrum stood their ground. Then some Parliamentarian cavalry brigades emerged through the gaps in the line of infantry and charged the Royalist infantry. With no cavalry support, the Royalist infantry began to give way. Some Parliamentarian infantry advanced and overran the Royalist artillery. The battle ended with an exchange of musket fire before the night brought a close to the hostilities. The Royalists fell back to their starting positions as they regrouped. The following day, both armies formed up again, but neither side was willing or had the strength to resume the battle. Although Essex had been reinforced, he withdrew during the evening to Warwick Castle, abandoning several guns on the battlefield. With the indiscipline of their cavalry costing the Royalist army the opportunity of an outright victory, they moved to capture Banbury. Although the exact numbers of casualties during the battle have been hard to quantify, it has been estimated that the Royalist casualties numbered about 1,000 men, while the Parliamentarian casualties numbered about 1,500.